So this video is going to be more of another rough kind of discussion video, like the last one with Zan. But this time I'm going to be talking with another friend of mine, Ethan. And it's going to be less of a debate than the last one. It's going to be more of a rough discussion. We kind of cover a variety of different topics. We're not so focused on just the chosen one. We're talking about Crate, talk about mortis, we talk about some philosophy stuff, some force mechanics, how all that sort of stuff works. So if you're interested in that, stick around. Again, it's more of a rough discussion, so we haven't really got a script or a set. We're just kind of rambling, having a conversation about Star Wars, some of the deep stuff as well, so you might be interested in it, so stick around anyway. It's a long video, but you might learn something new, so yeah.
So the way I understand it is that my understanding is that living beings in some form as a byproduct produce the Force, and it's like a sugar or carbon dioxide or something like that. It's serving that role, right? It's not literally that, but similar deal there. The algae eats that, feeds off of the Force. And then I think the next step is that the midichlorians would consume the wills. So I don't really think the midichlorians are very involved with generating living force.
Well, it's the whole thing that Lucas paints, right? The picture that he paints is that the cell splitting is what generates that living force. And he says the wills commanded the midichlorians to create the chosen one. And I take that in the context of, like, he commanded the wills commanded the living force to do this whole cell splitting thing, which we know is what created Anakin. That we know that does create living force, right? So
is it the cell splitting that does it? I thought it was cells dying.
No. So cell splitting is what creates the living force. They say that that when Plagueis reaches out to all those midichlorians, and Lucas alludes to the same thing, although he doesn't mention Plagueis, but it all implies that it says directly that it's splitting that does it, but it's implied obviously that it's Plagueis who does that splitting through reaching out through to all the midichlorians in the universe.
I'll have to see the splitting creates the living force stuff.
That parallels with real life, right? Because that cell splitting creates that life energy. So I don't see why it would be different in Star Wars than real life kind of thing.
Yeah, the one thing with the Plagueis novel is Lucino's on record saying he changed what a midichlorian is because he didn't agree with what it was fundamentally.
I haven't seen that. What does he say?
Effectively, what he said is that he portrayed the midichlorians more like subatomic particles than he did cells or living beings. That's the mindset behind the Plagueis novel. He said that in an interview.
Do you think that was just maybe... Hey, Nathaniel, bring the blowtorch here. Do you think that was maybe just speaking to the way Plagueis sees it? Or
no, his wording was very much just, I didn't really like the idea of them being cells, so I changed it. More or less, that's what he said.
Sorry, he didn't like the idea of them being living things, so he changed it to cells.
Yeah, he didn't like the idea of them being cells, so he changed it to more subatomic particles.
Okay, but what does he think about the idea of them being living, like, just a smaller... Because from my reading of the Plagueis novel, he kind of, like, a lot of it just aligns with what Lucas says, and maybe shows that Plagueis has a little bit of a warped interpretation of it, but what he's saying, the groundwork of it, is largely what Lucas says.
He didn't really say. He kind of alluded to the fact that they may or may not have a joint consciousness, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah,
so
because Plagueis doesn't believe in it on a real level, does he? So I think maybe...
Plagueis does. Plagueis does. Tenebris doesn't.
But he doesn't. He thinks it. He has more of a science. What I mean is, he has more of a science approach to the Force than a spiritual, religious approach.
That's kind of just Book of Sith. After a reread, he does a big tonal shift about 3/4 through the book. That was the Book of Sith. Science Plagueis is more like Tenebris.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So there's just a tonal shift.
1 second. I'm just ripping a fat dab. What? Yeah, the whole thing with the maxichlorians as well, I need to look into that with Tenebris, because that's kind of like a... What's your take on all that sort of stuff? Because that's kind of weird, like...
Well, again, it's difficult to parse through it because the midichlorians and maxichlorians and whatever serve a somewhat different role than what George intends them to be.
I
But
think
what they are meant,
go carry on. Sorry.
because George kind of posits the idea that they are a metaphor for both mitochondria and chloroplasts, right?
Yeah.
And he also mentions that, and this is an actual scientific theory as well, that mitochondria migrated inside of another cell, and they are living cells themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
a lot of it really. That's what I was getting at when I say a lot of it connects. Actually, I think that was before you joined. But I was saying a lot of these philosophies, these real world philosophies and sciences, everything that the Force is based on. I was telling Aslik that I kind of believe in the Force in the real world in a sense because a lot of where these philosophies and sciences intersect, like string theory, quantum physics, Taoism, shamanism, they all intersect, and that kind of just is the Force where they all intersect. And
yeah.
like it's you can actually see you were talking about science back in there. What I found is that a lot of what George says in relating to the mitochondria, and then also a lot of what's in the Plagueis novel, kind of does all fit into this one framework of how string theory, quantum physics fits into shamanism and all that. If that makes sense, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Um, anyways, with the maxichlorians, basically the idea there is that the midichlorians can migrate from cells at that point, and
Mm-hmm.
they can migrate into cells again. So it seems to be returning the midichlorians to a prehistoric state, a pre-complex life state, when they were a single-celled organism that could move outside of a cell themselves.
Okay. Yeah, no, I haven't got much into the Maxichlorians. I need to look into that more. But
I
it
mean,
seems
it's
like
only a short. It only appears in the one short story, so it's not like particularly
yeah,
important.
important. Yeah,
But it's just it does in that sense it does kind of align with what George was wanting for the origin of the midichlorians.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anyways,
Yeah, I've been looking a lot into the. Did you read my Carvasta Anakin thing?
mm,
Any of the recent stuff that I've done because I've kind of linked everything kind of in together.
are you talking about the jungle and instinct stuff?
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of the like what I really didn't get until I went back because you and Jake told me to read Coruscant Nights and all that sort of stuff the other day for Ramage. And by the way, fucking Ramage is sick. Like I've been proper looking into him. But a lot of the stuff I recognised there as well is that it really frames Vader, especially within the context of the novel, as a kind of opposite to Carvasta. It's almost like he's the primal jungle anima aspect, the complete thing that Vader is not. But it kind of shows that, in a sense, kind of shows a glimpse of what, in a sense, kind of shows kind of the comparison between pre-suit Vader and suit Vader in the sense that he goes like Carvast is this like super anima beast, primal, connected with the planet. His power is basically the power of Heron Call. Um, but then you've got Vader, whose power is completely the opposite. He's powerful in the complete opposite way. So when they say Vader's more powerful than Carvasta, I think that's more a declaration of what way is more powerful in totality than saying that. You get what I mean there? It's kind of the
So
opposite.
I think the big thing there, and what they kind of describe, and Jake has mentioned this before, but they talk about how Vader's energy is pent up, well, whereas Vaster's a direct conduit, right? So Vaster's always kind of just shooting out what he takes in.
Mm-hmm.
Vader can hold on to power for a lot longer. So
In what
I think it's
way, in what aspect do you think he holds
um
on to power?
you know how Maul will meditate and he'll use all the hatred he's ever kind of experienced in his life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bring that up.
Yeah.
Vaster can't really do that. He's more animalistic.
He's more. Yeah,
So
that's what I mean. He's more flowing with the currents of the planet, more
yeah,
primal in a way.
he's very much in the moment. I don't really. That's probably a commentary on sentience in a way, where
So it's more like
once you have living memory, you can kind of, well, again, just save it all up for later or use it all at once, whatever.
yeah, yeah. It's like in it's in Jedi. They mentioned that, don't they? They say Luke can draw power from Ben's memory. Um, in
Yeah.
this fight with, and that connects to the whole idea of like they say Yoda in Return of the Jedi itself. They say Yoda will always be with you, as if he's kind of like, um, like that sort of strength of his spirit is always within Luke. Not that he can draw and all of that immediately, kind of thing, but that is what can cause those mental. It can affect his mentality and how he draws power, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I do think with Faster, you're basically just dealing with, oh, this is how strong he is at any given moment.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, probably in the long run, he's going to beat breaks off Vader anyways.
Yeah, just
But
because
Vader
of
could
the way
probably
the
get a couple
relationship.
early good shots in,
Yeah.
because he'll have more energy to start with.
That's why I'm finding it harder and harder to really make a list because, and the Vasta Vader example is a good example of why it's hard to make a list because people are powerful in different ways. So, you've got Vader who can't technically be beaten by anyone but Luke, but then you've got Luke who can be beaten in Return of the Jedi at least by fucking pretty much everyone. You know what I mean? So it's like you
Well,
can't really rank a complete power, and the way Tarvas is stronger in the Anima, Vader's stronger in the Numa, the Imperium, stronger in the Imperium rather. Um, it's just hard to do a complete power ranking with power
oh, for
as a
sure.
blanket statement.
For sure.
But I've never really got much into the fighting martial arts aspect of it, or more like philosophy, spirituality, power based, kind of focused. But what I've been looking at recently is how do you look at the dynamic between like the living force and the Numa, right? Because from what I've seen with your takes, you seem to think that you know um, Celeste Morn is just completely dust held together by will, and you think that it's. I've seen you say that the will and the Numa can completely compensate for the living force. Where
Yes.
I agree in a sense to where it can elevate you past that, but I don't think that it will ultimately be better in the end. You know what I mean?
It's a little hard to say. I don't. There's. I have it in my head, right? I have it modeled in my head. I'll see if I give me a couple minutes, and I'll see if I can't
Yeah, of course.
give you a visualization of that.
When you have a little think, I'm gonna smack a little dab.
All right. So the idea with using the force is, or force use is, do or do not, right?
Uh-huh.
And having multiple consciousnesses in that makes it easier for one consciousness to do what another consciousness knows can't be done, for example. So what Myrrh and what Celeste do would be, because it requires some cognitive dissonance, right? You can't 100% do this by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I would argue that what Myrrh does and what Celeste does is that both of them are kind of tricking the other with an illusion into creating this kind of balance. It's less of a matter of Myrrh's power keeps Celeste alive and more of a matter of their perceptions of each other and their perceptions of what they're doing and what they know about what they're doing kind of evens out. So they aren't necessarily mantling an impossible thing by themselves, and neither one of them is doing anything that they feel is actually measurably impossible, right?
Yeah. But
So that's why I mentioned, for example, when Crate brings himself back from the dead, how does he do it? Well, he sends Vision, and then he sends Vision, and then to complete it all off, he has Warlock tell all the Sith that, hey, Crate is in stasis healing. It's like he's able to draw on the preconceptions that other people have about his status and use that as his fuel to heal himself, right? It's not really a matter of his power doing this. It's a fact that all of these interactions are happening anyways in the mind,
mm-hmm.
and he's just able to use that.
So it's like a web formed by his followers. You're saying essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's similar to
So
just the living force in general. Then it's like almost like that's the point I'm kind of getting at is that the web that kind of relies on is it's very real and can work, but ultimately it's going to be less powerful and less reliable than the actual web of anima created by all living things. And I think that's obviously why that's why Crate wants Cade, right?
So the only thing I have to say there is that I think the anima would be more susceptible to laws, I suppose. laws of reality, laws of this, that, or the other thing.
Yeah.
I think I guess if we're going to call it the pneuma, would be more malleable. And
It's
one
more.
example of this is in Fate of the Jedi. The AIM-T are able to teleport across the galaxy whether they are force sensitive or not, using the force, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
So it's like, yeah,
I
they can
think
just
there is something
contribute.
to the anima in terms of. Hmm,
Because that's kind of I think where mainly me and you disagree is just that kind of anime pneuma link. Because I think honestly, like we have a similar framework of how we see the force.
oh,
Um,
for sure.
but
I would argue that. Well, again, do you if we're going to look at the Earth as a microcosm for the Force, let's say that the ocean embodies part of it, the land embodies part of it, and the atmosphere embodies part of it, for example.
yeah,
Let's say that the atmosphere is the cosmic force. And then let's say that the water is the living force,
mm-hmm.
and that day to day life is on the land.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue that it might be better to sit on the land, stand on the land, than it is to swim in the water. And particularly when it comes to knowing where a river's going relative to something else. Like, think of it, I guess, people who are able to use the pneuma without necessarily being connected to the anima are able to get out of the river. Like, a fish doesn't really know what, like, a fish doesn't have a map of the planet, for example.
Yeah.
There's something to the there's something to the ability to exist
There
outside
is
of a system.
something. Yeah, I'd agree there. Are you saying that there's the because when you say the fish doesn't really know a mapping for anything outside of the river, are you getting that
Yeah,
in a kind of a Kaidos view of things where he goes outside of the river and kind of sets out
that
the lot? Because the way I'd frame it, right, is because the way you've just framed it is very similar to the way I'd frame it. But I'd frame it as the living force is the river, the power is the water, and the basin leading to the ocean is the cosmic force, and that the people sit in the river, but the pneuma creates a dam and dams the flow of the water, right? And so
yeah.
it's more. I'd more say that you need to absolve the pneuma and just become Jason. To obviously that's how
But
you flow with that river. So
part of
from
what Jason did, though, to become that is he severed himself from the Force, right? That's the whole deal in NJO when he's going through the
well, not necessarily
Yuzong
severed
Dawn
himself
stuff.
from the Force, more severed himself from people's ideas of the Force. So it's not necessarily that the Force destroy. It's more destroy all ideas of the Force to let the actual Force flow through you. If that makes
Sure,
sense. It's not
sure, but
necessarily
that's
that he
still the
separates
living
himself.
Force, right?
But it's more rooted in the pneuma though, because it's not necessarily separate himself from what the anima is. It's separating himself from the impression that his pneuma puts on what the anima is. So his belief on these aspects of the force, the pneuma aspect, is getting dissolved, not necessarily the anima itself, right?
Yeah, so you're saying that he got out of the water, but he was still surrounded by water vapor effectively.
I'm saying that he stayed in the water, but he absolved himself enough to become the water that flows into the ocean, and that is the
That,
whole.
that's what happens in his oneness, but some of his abilities are as much about not being connected as they are about being connected.
Yeah, and I think that gets down to the point where so it's essentially a process of clarity then surrender, right? And there's the process of clarity, which it then says in the passage that Jason can make a choice between becoming a force god and becoming one with the force. And I think that directly parallels the earlier sentence when it talks about the rediscovery of surrender and how the Jedi went to arrogance. I think that's directly connected there because I think becoming the Force God is what Yoda does. He tries to become the daughter and match the son's power, meet power with power, and
Yep.
become the light side God. And that's opposed to what Jason does. He doesn't choose to become this God. He chooses to just let go and become it. So he doesn't become this extremity polarity of the light side, this god like the daughter. He just absolves into the father.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think here about
It's
the
trippy stuff, like.
because, for example, they say that Makashi works by blocking elements of the Force and imposing your will on it, and actually kind of changing how the river flows overall, not by being part of it, but by standing against it. So I think there is an element of, well, beavers can, for example, build dams, right?
Yeah,
Or humans can build dams,
yeah,
and they can convert that energy into electricity or this, that, or the other thing.
mm-hmm.
So, or they can build the Panama Canal or whatever else, which is kind of, but a fish can't do any of that, right?
Yeah. So I'd attribute a fish to a normal, um, a normal kind of just being, not a force sensitive, because the force sensitive.
I would actually do the opposite. I would say that a force sensitive would be a fish,
Okay, why?
and that a non-force sensitive would be a land dwelling human being, for example.
Okay. Well,
And one metaphor here would be, um, if you were to describe color to a blind person, someone who has seen color all of their life has absolutely no chance, right?
mm-hmm.
But what about a blind person who suddenly gained the ability to see? Would they have a better shot at describing that to another blind person?
Well, it gets into the difference between just darkness and color. I suppose you could connect that maybe to the color spectrum of the force, in a sense.
Well, I'm just using it as a metaphor, basically, as like when things come naturally to you, you don't necessarily understand them as well as when you have to work for it. Is kind of what I'm getting at.
No, I do get what you mean.
Which is why I think like Endedu being undead and still being able to use the Force, or Hanimi finding his way back to the Force and becoming this monster Force user, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, what? Actually, getting into Onimi, how do you think that kind of works? Because that links directly into what I was just saying about the arrogance and the oneness, which is where I don't know if you've read anything recently that I've written, but essentially it says that this is a rediscovery that everyone used to be essentially oneness Jason, and that then
Yep.
when they stray down on a path to arrogance, which is obviously a nod to the prequel Jedi, which we get
Yeah.
told the part of the problem is that they're too powerful. So
Yep.
this arrogance isn't making them weaker than the oneness state. This arrogance is making them go beyond this oneness state to the detriment of balance, because this isn't a good thing. That's part of the problem. But that goes
With
beyond, it elevates above the unifying, which is mirrored by the son and the daughter going outside of the father's control. You know, the son's stronger than the father in the episodes. So it gets into that, which is why I think, like, you know what I mean? Like, they go past that state.
yeah, with Anemi specifically, what's described is he's using the perception of Shinra basically as battle meditation to make Shinra as strong as the Yuzhong Vong think he is.
Yeah.
Crimson checks in.
And Lucino says that Anemi doesn't use that part of the Force, but he understands it and he exploits it in Shinra. So Shinra is basically an illusion cast by
What do you mean by he
Anemi.
doesn't use it, but he exploits it?
He doesn't actually touch that collective, but he understands that it exists and he knows how to mold it without actually touching it.
Okay.
Which is the whole deal with Shimra.
Yeah.
Shimra's strength is drawn from the certitude or the understanding of the Yuzhong Vong species. And what he does is that he elevates Shimra's presence when the Vong are around him, and he just uses a bunch of propaganda basically to elevate Shimra into this it's unthinkable that he can die kind of being, right?
Yeah, it almost links into the almost like a Darth Ruin Daemon kind of thing. Like, it ties into belief, right, with Shimura.
Shimra doesn't actually have any powers, but what Anemia is doing is he's effectively using battle meditation indirectly.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's more like it's entirely Numa based rather than anima based, because they've obviously like disconnected themselves from that.
I would say maybe one thing between the Numa and the Anima is that the Numa might be more fragile when it comes to those large scale. Just using the Numa might be more fragile when it comes to large scale force manipulations and destiny manipulation, because one small movement can throw it completely out of whack.
Yeah.
That would be the one disadvantage I see. I think the actual powers come easier, and I think they come better. Like, I don't think the kind of immortality that's possible with Numa manipulation would be necessarily as effective with Anima manipulation.
Yeah, well, the whole thing with the Numa manipulation, though, is that it's entirely dependent on the anima manipulation, in a sense, is because all spirits are just residual will, essentially. And then you've got the anima, which they're always trying to, like, get back to. So that's my point there. That, like, this Numa, like, when almost every time that a Numa spirit, residual will, possesses a person, it's a person with an anima connection. And on the off chance that it is someone without an anima connection, like someone like Celeste, who appears to be just sand, is that not just sustained by a living force presence in something like the Mir Talisman?
The Mir Talisman is also sand by that point.
It is? Okay, I haven't really... Is it?
Yep. Celeste binds it to her body in Dark Times, and then when Cade uses Dark Transfer on it, it turns into the same sand that Celeste was. So it's kind of just shown...
Celeste, remind me, I haven't read it in a while.
Yep. Celeste, when she dies, she turns into a corpse, and then she turns into sand. She basically decays in real time. And then the Mir Talisman, when Cade hits it with Dark Transfer, does the same thing. So it's just basically saying it was one thing by that stage, and it's just one rotting, dead bunch of sand. It's just the fact that Mir and Celeste are both kind of confusing the other into the nature of what... Celeste thinks probably that the talisman is real, or maybe Celeste thinks her body is real, and Mir knows that she's sand, and then Mir thinks the talisman is real, but Celeste thinks it's sand. So again, that's kind of what I was getting to when I was saying that it's two minds confusing the other, each kind of covering for the part that they know should be impossible.
Yeah, so it's kind of like another view of symbiosis, in a sense, like more of a Numa-centric view of symbiosis.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. I need to reread those comics with that in mind, actually, because from my last reading, it appeared to me that they were sustaining themselves basically off a anima presence imbued in the talisman. But if that turns to, if that point is that all of it was sand to begin with, and that connects then to Andedu and Warlock saying your power's in your mind kind of thing, is that essentially what you're getting at there? Because that's been an idea that I was like kind of stringing on to, but like I didn't really take me to, you know what I mean? It didn't really
so what again? What I think that does tie into the Andedu situation, because he absorbs what's his face, right? That cultist. Mm-hmm. I think again that's just a case of his body is being inhabited by the cultist, and even though the body is dead, Andedu is confusing the cultist into thinking the body is alive. Basically, the mind of the body's systems is that cultist, and then the one using the force is Andedu. So I think if you can trick somebody into thinking something is real and something is possible, even if you don't think it is, you can use those powers. And I think that's what's happening with Andedu, and I think that's what's happening with Mir and Celeste.
Yeah, so that gets into all like the Numa focus to say as your reality, power, belief kind of thing. Right.
Yeah, and that's even what Warlock says to Andedu. You've tricked your body into thinking it's alive.
Yeah. So there's a certain extent it gets into the whole thing with like delusion and belief, because delusion can be as strong as belief in a way.
Yeah.
But
so it's just a way basically of bringing another mind into the fold and using them to fill the gaps, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one mind, are you implying that one mind can't necessarily do that by itself, but two minds can?
Yes, I would say that's true. I don't think one mind can do it by themselves.
Okay, yeah, yeah. That kind of gets into as well, as I was saying before about you and Jake were saying, have a look back at Ramage. Um, the whole thing is that um, he achieves this method. He knows how to do it, but he can't do it and says it's impossible without the mind of the Cephalans, or however you pronounce that. Cephalans?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So he can't do it
Scython.
without. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he can't do
No,
it
never
without
mind.
this.
Never mind. That's the underground Coruscant thing. Never mind. That's different.
Oh,
Scythons are different.
yeah, I think it's Cephalon or Cephalons. They can't do it. He can't do it without this kind of universal connected mind that they share.
Yeah.
He would be able to be a full-on Time Lord essentially and go back and manipulate. He'd literally become the full-on cosmic force, the Aperion,
Yeah.
if he could have this mind of the Cephalons. And he works out the strategy. He knows exactly how to do it, but he just doesn't have that mind, and he says it's impossible. So that gets into the same kind of thing. I think, in a sense, multiple minds in conjunction can have more of an effect,
Yeah.
which I don't necessarily disagree with. I think the single mind, I don't think can completely replace the anima, but I think with I'm not opposed to the idea that multiple minds or some sort of context engine can have that effect and do pretty much the same thing. But that gets into
Yeah. I feel like maybe insanity would be a bit of a loophole there. Maybe if you're insane enough, you can do it by yourself. But there's always going to be some contradiction within any use of force power, basically.
yeah. No, I
Like,
agree there, but like yeah, in the insanity, I think you'd achieve parts of it, but you'd lose a lot of it. I think a lot. I think Dark Empire Sheev kind of speaks to that a little bit. He's gained a lot from the insanity, but also like lost a lot as well in different ways.
yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that.
And even you could say, I mean, I don't tend to argue this, but I've seen you argue it. I haven't really looked into it much, but I've seen you argue that Revenge of the Sith, Palpatine, is similar in a way that it kind of goes a bit crazy.
Yes, I think the deal with Palpatine is that normally, or how do I say this? Um, you know how Maul is on Lothal Minor, right?
What book's that in again? Remind me.
Sorry, Maul and Lothal Minor. That's in the Clone Wars when he has his spider legs, right?
Oh yeah, yeah,
He's all batshit insane.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think among the Sith Lords, at least seen in the movie, Sidious is kind of the only one who can draw on that energy while alive and not injured,
Drone
if that makes sense.
what energy?
Um, Psychosis, I guess. Psychosis and fear
While
directly.
still alive.
I guess not alive, but uninjured, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because he's still technically alive before at that point, right? Before Revenge of the Sith, like he's still got a living force presence before he gets Anakin, right? So
Yeah, did you?
that's necessarily just his psychosis. Him doing that is reliant on him having Anakin, because he doesn't necessarily go into that crazy state till after the fact, right?
No, I don't really think it's reliant on Anakin. I think what it's reliant on is basically just the fact that he's not been Jedi trained. I think it's kind of emotions they can't feel necessarily,
So you're getting
and I
into
think there's a lack of shame to him as well.
you're getting into a more primal kind of like Carvasta, where he's kind of
Um, less Carvaster,
strictly instinctual primal.
less Carvaster, and maybe a little bit less primal, but more like Carvaster is still at any given moment the predator in the relationship, right?
Yeah,
I think Sidious is actually able to kind of draw on prey instincts as well. So
yeah,
the more pathetic half of it, I think he's able to use.
yeah. I think it kind of ties into how they say in Revenge of the Sith, right? He's the inheritance from the dark. Like that's what the Jedi coming to their end is, the inheritance from the dark. It's all they say. These are all natural descendant beings, as in like Sidious is like a being of nature, and they allude to this in Plagueis as well when they say that in the lack of when lights got too strong, darkness rises because lights rule for too long, kind of thing. Gets into that same kind of thing because I think it's to do with Sidious's nature, maybe, and that Sidious can do that. What you're saying he can do because it's instinctual for him. I don't think necessarily that because he's this inheritance of the dark. I don't necessarily think that he's going against anything within himself. I think it's more instinctual for him. So that's
I think under normal circumstances, so in Legacy, using the Force is basically presented as a extension of the ego, right? You can use the Force because you feel strong.
Mm-hmm.
I think in Sidious's case, he's actually using the Force better as he feels weaker.
Why do you think that?
Sorry?
Why do you think that? Sorry, I'm filling me water up.
Because under most circumstances, when these Force users get more and more desperate, they kind of do worse in fights. Sidious is the opposite, right?
Yeah, but do you not think that ties into what I was saying about it just being instincts for him, kind of thing?
I think it is instinctual. I think it's different than most creatures would kind of draw on that. I think in his particular case, there's a lack of shame there that doesn't really exist in most other creatures. Which is why I was kind of talking about prey items or like zebras or moose or whatever, donkeys, etc. You get these kind of creatures that are built for running away, but they can really go hog wild in specific situations, right?
Yeah.
So most of the Sith, I would say, are predators, right? And when they are preyed upon themselves, they flounder a little bit.
Yeah, it's like you can connect that directly to Revenge of the Sith. You know, when Sidious tries to run away from Yoda.
Yeah, it's that patheticness, right?
And he jumps away and he's trying to run away.
So I think that's just the core of him. I think he has to. The only real way he can use that power is by being pathetic. Whereas everyone else, I think, can kind of be a predator. Sidious can do some of the ambush stuff.
Well, that makes sense as well with the whole cancer thing, right? The whole parasite thing is that it connects there in the sense that he's completely reliant on the host. Do you get how that connects? Do you get that? Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Mm-hmm. So it's like, but I guess you could say that almost connects to the anima flow, right? Because that's kind of where instincts come from, is the flow of anima. And reading the room.
My only
to say, yeah, like reading the room. That's the anima flow in the room.
My only thing there might be that remember that the priestesses are the emotions within beings, and they're also the link between the cosmic and the living force, right? But they're cosmic force themselves, kind of projecting to the living, right?
Yeah.
So I would say that the instincts are the moment when the cosmic force becomes the living force, when memory becomes what's happening now, basically.
Yeah, when it becomes the present, when that anima, and that's all the anima is, right? It's the present life current that happens, moment to moment life current, so to speak. So
yeah, and that would be genetic memories too, right? Like how people have an ingrained fear of snakes or heights or whatever.
Yeah, or like how if you have like a newborn, it's not going to jump in a river,
that kind of shit. Mm-hmm. That kind of shit. You do have memories that have been passed down from other generations in your genetic code.
Mm-hmm. But that's more. You could say that's less. I mean, it's entirely anima. I don't think it's pneuma at all because it's not mind related. But it's like how nexuses work. It's a imprint on the environment, and those imprints on the environment and the anima flows through you, and you read not to jump in the river when you're like a dog.
It's not. See, that's why I think they're talking about the priestesses being a connection, right? The connection between the two. Because remember, fear is one of those priestesses too. They just can't perceive that one.
Mm-hmm. It's the only one that doesn't have a face.
Yep. But it does show itself in all those visions. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have any set face, right? But it shows up to Yoda as snakes, right? That's showing the instinctual fear part of it.
Showed up to him as snakes?
Yeah, on Korriban, it shows up as a bunch of snakes and then it congeals into the
and the spirits and that. Yeah.
So I do think that's getting at not only like acquired fears or fears of a sentient mind, but also just base instincts.
Instinctual fear, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I do think that would come from, in Star Wars context anyways, the Pneuma as well.
because Pneuma doesn't pass down, right? Pneuma's the individual mind, the individual self. And while I agree, the anima is also the body, right? It's not just the current that flows, it's your life current. So I think it's more imprinted on the life current based on your environment than it is imprinted into your actual individual mind. Because I think if you went to a different
it's a cycle, right?
those might be different. Those fears, those instinctual fears, could be opposite on a different planet or a different country, even maybe. You know what I mean? It's kind of. I think it's more based on the environment than the individual self. Is my point.
Well, it's a cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even though in a living being is where the force is produced, in some shape or form, that energy is being recycled back from the cosmic force into the living force again. It just keeps going and going and going.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that if these emotions represent the link between the cosmic force and the living force, that's the moment the cosmic force becomes the living force. As soon, like, you generate the force, and those emotions in one way or another shape the energy you generate, right?
Yeah, 100%. No, I agree there,
So,
but that's still would that still not be anima based rather than pneuma based?
it would be an anima-based product, but it would be made of pneuma.
Yeah, no, I can. Yeah, I can agree with that. I can agree with that. It seeps into pneuma when that, just based on, I'd say, based on your environment, it would seep into the pneuma as you kind of develop awareness. But I'd say it's obviously inherently there.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. No, I'd agree with that. Obviously,
so again, that's kind of the point I was getting at with these creatures that only exist in the pneuma. They're still able to kind of use the anima indirectly, or
like
in the case of Celeste. Yeah, like Talzin, for example, or like in the case of Myrrh and Celeste, how they are. It's almost like they've built their own anima within the pneuma.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Well, the way I see Talzin is not that she's kind of built her own anima within the pneuma. It's and I don't know if you've looked much into effigy or religious witchcraft and how that ties into.
Yeah, I have. I have.
Yeah. So the way I think Talzin does it is not necessarily through just pure effort of will, but through a so have you looked into string theory at all?
I have a vague idea of what that gets into. Are you talking about like?
You know how they say on the threads in the force, and they pull on it, and it creates something down. It creates a different thing down the line when someone pulls on one of those threads or something happens. You know what I mean? There?
Is this kind of just subatomic distortion?
So it's a basis for the living force. Is that everything's just kind of like waves and living vibrational energy. And so
I understand that.
In those lines of energy, the almost like a well in the anima that the conscious pneuma can fit into, and I think that's by some sort of ritual carrying of the spirit Ichor from Dathomir. She kind of fills those wells in the living force and can appear that way. So it's not that she has it it's not that she carries a anima in a pneuma. It's that she carries. Well, it is in a sense. It's that she brings anima from Dathomir along with her. That's how I kind of see Talzin, at least.
It's hard to know for sure. One thing that I will mention is that in the document I sent you a couple weeks ago with the Worlds of the Force stuff. One thing that I did mention is that the reason why large, you know how small particles and electrons can exist in multiple places at once, right? And that's what creates the wave shell, the shell of the wave.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why that is because gravity does not work on those subatomic particles powerfully enough to really make them maintain a proper shape. Larger particles could do the same thing, provided gravity was counteracted.
Okay, yeah, I need to take another look at that, because my science is a bit foggy on that
But
regard. But yeah,
but
carry on more.
but I guess the relevance to that would be is that you know how you know how Filoni talks about how the Force Planet and Mortis don't necessarily exist in the same state all of the time, right? Sometimes it's a dead planet, sometimes it's a living planet, sometimes it's here, sometimes it's there, blah 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 blah. It's not really set in any time or place or state of being. I
It's
would
a mirror of the
argue
entrant.
I would argue that that is kind of meant to represent those subatomic realities, right? Like how the Force planet can be the focus and the origin of all the Force energy. Mortis can simultaneously be this. Fate of the Jedi says there's simultaneously another 10,000 worlds that are this, where they are the focus and the origin of all of the Force energy. And they share that position, but they're also singular in that position, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it.
So I would look at that as one electron that exists in multiple places, or again, a wave of energy
Because the way
based
I
on
look
one
at it
particle.
is more so kind of like, I guess I see it in a way the way you're saying it. I see it similar, but they kind of, you have this web of the Force, and I think it kind of travels along these webs of the Force, the same time webs that Mace can perceive through Shatterpoint, and
Yep.
it's them that they kind of manifest on that living Force energy, which is all of the living Force at one time or place, because it's the present. That's what the living Force is.
Yep.
So when it appears, and to whoever goes there, it mirrors because mortis is based on a concept from shamanism called the axis mundi, which is basically a convergence point of all the energy of a world, where the axis can be, where it's an axis and it can be shifted, hence like axis mundi.
Yep.
That's what mortis is based on. So it represents all that living Force energy at that time, whenever it manifests, wherever on that kind of web it manifests. But it's a mirror of the entrance, and the entrant can kind of interact with that to the extent of what's within them as a kind of internal challenge. And it's the same with the Force planet with Yoda. You know, it's an internal challenge for Yoda. And I think that obviously connects with my Anakin argument, is that he can interact with all of that, which proves it's within him to begin with, no matter how he interacts with it. The fact that he can is proof that it's all within him,
Yep.
kind of thing. So it's a mirror of the entrant, basically. But I don't think that necessarily disagrees with what you're saying. I think it's, I need to look at it. I need to look at how those two ideas correlate. But I get what you mean.
Yeah.
I see it in a sense. I see how it connects, but I'd need to properly connect it.
The document is basically what that's trying to describe is the actual scientific properties of the energy field and how people feed up how it feeds all these subatomic particles, for example.
Yeah. No, I did read the document that you sent. That was really good. But
So the idea of superposition, which is existing in more than one place or at once, Talzin is, you know, in, did I mention to you that the mist that area where you get the mortis dagger, you have this kind of bluish green mist that comes from the core of the planet.
yeah,
Did I mention that Dathomir has the exact same phenomena?
I don't think you did, but I've kind of noticed that, and the same with Return of the Jedi, where with the rising thing, and I just attributed that to be, essentially the life energy, or
Yeah, they say that blue energy at the core of Mortis and Dathomir is something that organic sensors can pick up, and it's a living core. It's an organic core. Um, the ones are actually made out of that in Fate of the Jedi. They're made out of that smoke.
yeah, because they coalesce from the geyser, don't they? And then I mean, I wouldn't say the ones are made of that, are they? It's the
No, they're made of that.
The font and the pool are made of that. they come from that, but they have to drink from that liquid, right, in order to.
The beings that became the ones had to drink from that. The actual ones themselves.
Are that. I get what you mean there. Yeah.
So Talzin would be similar in nature, right? Nature to that.
How in what way do you mean?
Well, they say that Talzin was never really real, or Sidious says Talzin was never really real. Her existence was only ever a dream, blah, 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 blah. And she manifests in Son of Dathomir through a section of stone carved out for her in her temple, and that stone turns to flesh, and then when she dies, it turns back to stone.
Yeah.
Right? So I would argue that Talzin is very, very clearly an example of the same shit.
Yeah, in a way, because obviously she's not coming from those celestial nodes. But I'm trying to think, what aspect do you think that would really like? If you narrow it down to the Aperion Yume anima, obviously she's a being of pure anima and Numa, not anima and Numa, Aperion and Numa. But she's not drinking. If you say she's like, if you put it into like the drinking from the thing, from the pool metaphor, she would be the refined version of. She'd be doing that maybe within one of the pools, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
It's trippy stuff when you get to talking about all this stuff, right? Rather send your head west.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and
explain what you mean by that.
Well, I'm trying to connect that to the idea of superposition, right? Mm-hmm. Where something can exist in multiple places at once. Like she gives some of her energy away to Maul, and that weakens her. But Talzin can manifest through Maul. And the Talzin that went to Bardata actually did die. Like there were two Talzins at that point in time, right?
Yeah, vaguely. I need to read. Where's this from? Son Dathomir and.
Yeah, she gave much of her energy to Darth Maul, and the part of Talzin that actually drains Dooku comes from within Maul, like manifests through Maul.
Yeah. No, I recall.
The Talzin that went to Bardata just dissolves into smoke and dies.
When that happens, you mean?
Yeah, like you know that episode where she fights Mace, right? And she's see-through.
Mm-hmm.
She dissolves and dies.
Yeah.
And then Son of Dathomir happens.
And it disappeared.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I need to watch them and then read that like right after again because it's been a while since I've done that. But yeah, no, I vaguely recall though. So, are you saying that like what's the connection there with the ones though? Because I'm kind of
well, for example, like when the sun manifests through Ahsoka and talks through Ahsoka, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bites Ahsoka, gives her his energy. It's the same deal, right?
Yeah, and that's the same thing though with Anakin and Sidious. In fact, you know that quote that talks about the disappeared, and it's on StarWars.com.
Yeah, I do think Sidious is a little bit more limited in that way than Talzin is. Simply because...
What sense?
Well, we get to see Talzin use basically every unnatural power in the book, right? Like, Sidious can't fly, Sidious can't teleport, Sidious can't do this, that, or the other thing.
Yeah, I get what you mean. He's still grounded in the sense that he's not a spirit with empowered by the anima. He's a spirit that's still inherently animal but sustaining itself in a living body. So he's still a living thing, right? He's not he's not energy itself, kind of in the sense that Talzin is.
Yeah, Talzin shows basically every power that the ones show.
Yeah, and that links into them saying, yeah, she's that's what I mean when people say that I'm retarded for saying that people can be above the ones when the ones are doing all these crazy powers. And it's like, yeah, but we know for a fact that they are exploiting the powers, but we also know that it's to do with it's not necessarily that they're so much more powerful in terms of quantity of energy that they can do these feats. It's because of the shape of their energy. They are that energy itself. They're not harnessing it and pulling it through them. They don't have to do that whole. They don't have to go through the whole MIDI interface to pull that power through them. They are the energy itself, like Talzin, which is why she can do this crazy stuff. So it's.
And I mean, in fairness, In fairness, Talzin is much stronger than Sidious if she's not weakened anyways.
In what sense do you mean?
Well, they say she's weakened in Son of Dathomir, right? And she's still, and all of the quotes and everything still brings up the fact that it takes Dooku, Sidious, and Grievous to kill her. That's basically the center of every single summary of that situation. It's that Sidious needed Dooku and Grievous, otherwise he could not kill Talzin, basically.
Yeah, it's
And this is her weekend.
It's funny though because it's also implied that she's below Dooku in a sense as well within that same comic, right? Doesn't it say like Dooku possesses it? She possesses none of Dooku's power or something. Obviously, an implication.
No, it's none of his saber skill.
Of his skill.
She's just a ship duelist.
Oh, okay, sound. Okay, yeah, okay.
So Sidious was basically admitting that, okay, maybe you have Dooku's body, but you can't beat me in a duel, is basically what that scene is for.
Okay. Okay, yeah, no, it is. It's you have all my power, but not my skill, isn't it? Yeah. So, how do you think that works? In what sense do you think she's above Sidious and all them in that sense? Because she is obviously depicted as this big kind of, almost like a Valkorian kind of character within Shadow, Son of Dathomir. Refined to the context of the medium, she is basically Valkorian in that comic. But then, at the same time, within the same sort of sources, she's also said to be with or even below Sidious and Yoda and all that. And obviously she is in the sense of the anime because she's looking to harness the living force presence from Queen Julia. But in what sense do you think she's stronger then? Because she doesn't actually achieve in the end what she wants to harness from Julia, which would make her this, which you'd imagine would be what makes her this kind of big figure in Son of Dathomir, but she doesn't actually achieve that. So what do you think it is that elevates her past that level of just being?
Well, I think basically what the whole deal with Talzin wanting a living force connection is just so she can do on Dathomir what she can do on Dathomir, she can do anywhere, basically. I think that's the only distinction. That's the only reason she wants to use the living force. She wants to be able to be free roam.
Hello?
I think basically power means freedom in this context, and power means destiny. She can only really interact meaningfully with Dathomir, or other planets similar enough to Dathomir.
Yeah, and she... Hang on a sec. Do you want to just go and grab a bottle of wine? Give me a card. Fine, I'll come with you in a minute. I'll go with you in a bit. Did Braden reply?
No, oh yeah, he did. His credit card, his debit card just said it expired.
Oh, sure. No, it never. Okay, sound. I'll go with you in a minute. Sorry, Ethan, what you're saying, mate. So, you were saying, we were on about Talzin, and you were saying that... I forgot your last point that you made. Repeat that, sorry.
So basically, I think the idea is that on Death, they repeat again and again that most of the Night Sisters' most powerful talents are only possible on Dathomir. Again and again and again, they say this.
It's like OP, mostly because of Dathomir.
Yeah, or even like when Talzin is fighting the droids, right? She creates a force defense bubble, and then that bubble spews out lightning. But against Sidious, she can only use standard force lightning, and she can only use standard powers, basically. And again, they say she's weakened, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the whole deal with the living force aspect of that is simply though so that she can go anywhere in the galaxy and use these powers.
Yeah. And that comes from do you think that comes directly from Dathomir? Like it's some sort of, because the way I see it was some sort of ritual, almost alchemy thing that retains a part of Dathomir within her, which travels around, and she kind of rides the flows of the currents of the living force. And as I say, them divots in the flow, she goes in that's where her Dathomir spirit ichor kind of fills that gap. If you get what I mean. If you look at it, you have to kind of get into string theory to get that. But that's
I kind of think it's the opposite in a way. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily think she's a being in of herself at this stage. I think she is more or less just Dathomir using a shell. Dathomir itself.
I guess that's not entirely contradictory to my stance either. I mean, I definitely think she's Dathomir based, and I think that Talzin as a Numa is a real thing. Would you agree there? Or not?
It's hard simply because they've mentioned that again. Sidious says not only was her existence is a dream, but her existence was only ever a dream. Somewhat Ron Filoni says she wasn't necessarily ever alive, for example.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's still in line, right?
So
it could still be purely Numa, like a Sith spirit, like Marka Ragnos' spirit, or Bane's spirit is, they say, exists, you do not anymore. He doesn't exist anymore, but he's still there as Numa.
Yeah, but that's how she was born, right? Is what they're getting at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I get what you mean. So it's... So she must have been born entirely of belief or something, right? Or at least some sort of like belief or something formed by the spirit Ichor, which I guess is a form of anima, right?
Yeah. And remember how shocked that Dooku is that Talzin was able to have Maul as a son too, right?
Yeah. Because, yeah, that's obviously... He's a living thing.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I guess it gets down to really what Ichor is. And obviously that's pulled directly from the daughter, right? But is the source of the Ichor on Dathomir from the daughter? Or is that just where they pull it to power themselves from?
They say that the core of Dathomir is that Ichor. It's basically an organic life form, Dathomir itself.
So there's probably a place... So do you think there's probably a place on Mortis that... It's like almost like Dathomir is a part of Mortis in a way.
So what I think, and so did I tell you that the planet that Luke and Leia go to in Crucible is actually Korriban? In the monument at Mortis?
The monolith?
Yeah, it's Korriban.
Is it?
Yes, because they go into the tombs. They foreshadow it as Korriban. They say that there's thousands of Dark Lord spirits here. They go into the Korriban tombs. Some of the spirits have Sith names. And Luke talks about how he knows what this planet is and he can't say it and he won't say it. And again, they're talking about it being time distorted, right? So basically, what my thought process there is that Korriban is the dead world that Filoni talks about, this dead place that doesn't actually spew out the Force in any way, shape, or form. And then what's in the monolith is kind of like a preservation, basically.
Did you know that Moraband's direct translation in Sanskrit is point of death?
No, I did not.
Yep. Yeah. So that connects with that.
So I think I'm trying to think of an example, maybe in fiction.
I know what you mean but I read that my reading of that was just that because you could attribute most of that to Mortis, and say, well, that's all Mortis. But you got me thinking there with saying that Luke's he thinks about like he won't name the planet.
Yeah, and Lando foreshadows it too.
And it's not. We know that it's definitely not Mortis. It's a Mortis-like thing, and we do know that Korriban is a Mortis-like thing as well, because it is the center of the darkness in it. So it's almost like the well of the dark side on Mortis. That's just Korriban.
The really big thing is that Lando foreshadows it as he says, "Are Leia and Luke going to look for the homeworld of the Sith or something?" Right? It's not direct, right? But he says that, and then there's thousands of Dark Lord spirits in catacombs that mirror Korriban's own. They have Sith names. They use Sith lightning. They're specifically Sith Dark Lords. Why are there thousands of Sith Dark Lords on a Mortis planet? In tombs. Right?
The tombs is what gets me, because I just figured, like, obviously, like, Mortis, the Cosmic Force exists there too. And that's...
Yeah.
Obviously where the... Well, I mean, the spirits live on the living force as well. They're imprints of the living force, so they can live on the living force. So that's how I kind of
actually have
it and reconciled it, I guess. But it makes sense.
Yeah, they do have tombs and actual coffins and everything too. So
yeah, no, that makes sense. Now I need to reread it. It's been like a year. But
yeah, just read it with that in mind, right? But my theory for Mortis too is that it's actually Utapau.
Okay. That's I wasn't expecting that going.
So I don't know if you read it, but Madang did a post in Cave of Evil about Darth Decimus, right?
Yeah.
You know how they have the sinkholes in on Utapau, the sinkholes with the water and whatever. The surface is barren and bland.
Yeah.
Then they have the sinkhole into an oasis, basically. On Mortis, you kind of have, and on Mortis, you have this opposite idea where you have the sinkhole into hell, right?
The well of the dark side, yeah.
Yeah. Um, but basically, it's just the phenotypical similarities between the ones and the pawns. The fact that Utapau is said to be the first planet that housed a Jedi temple 56,000 years before the events of the films. And then also also just that the fact that in some way, shape, or form, the Utapauans made the surface of Utapau inhospitable. Fuck. They made it,
Inhospitable.
yeah, inhospitable. Fuck. I can't pronounce that word. Anyways,
That's just me. I can't pronounce half the words.
they fucked it up in some way, and now they're caught in these sinkholes, right? And they're caught in darkness. Their eyes have kind of atrophied. Their ears have atrophied.
Mhm.
Effectively, what I'm saying is that the shape of Mortis is kind of built on the earliest Jedi sensibilities, which is why the ones look like, for example, why the son looks like the Grand Inquisitor, or why the daughter and the father have the same ear coverings as the pawns. And the sinkhole similarities is, again, just their metaphor or their religious view of hell, basically.
Yeah, because I mean, I need to look more into that entirely, but I like the point that because it kind of gets into how another relation, another link between Mortis and the real world, right? Because if that's where those spirits are going in that pit kind of thing, that kind of I think I'm understanding what you're saying anyway.
Yeah, because the ones are just an allegory for religion, right? Their forms aren't set in stone. They just look like this because it's based on the Jedi religion,
Yeah, but
basically.
it's also like a mirror of Anakin, so it's also going to appear to him exactly how he perceives all that looking. No matter what it, like, there is no real basis for what it really is. That energy is all shaped on perception. But
Yeah, I do think the fact that he sees them how the Jedi have classically seen them and how the Night Sisters have classically seen them might just be a extension of his perception too, though.
yeah, that's what I mean. It's because that's how he sees them, so that's how they appear on Mortis, right? Because it's just
Yeah,
that's what I was looking at with I was saying before I've been reading a lot of philosophy, and with the Axis Mundi it talks about amplification, and that made me think about the
yeah.
Latin Mortis amplification. And most people think it's like a extra fuel that everyone gets, like it doubles their power or whatever. But that's not what it means at all when you look at the spiritual context. Amplification
Yeah.
is amplification of your inner self. It amplifies your inner self. That's what that means. It's an amplifier and a magnet. That's it's not extra fuel that it doesn't double your power like you might imagine a typical Nexus to do. It's just it amplifies in the sense that it's amplifying your inner state. So that links to that one
Well, it's
anyway.
resonance, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's all matching. It's all frequencies and stuff, and that's what I mean. Like if Anakin sees, I think you know what I mean. Obviously, like if Anakin's perception, beliefs of all these concepts and stuff is manifested externally, it's externalized on Mortis.
Yeah,
It doesn't change what it is. It changes the shape of it, kind of thing.
I, I'm just saying that the forms that they take are also the classical representations that the Night Sisters know of them as, and how the Jedi know them, right? So I do think it is still kind of based in those religious views. I just think the fact that Anakin can see them like that is also it's not just representative of what Anakin sees, it's also representative of, again, how the galaxy is now,
Yeah,
right?
I'd agree there definitely because yet the Night Sisters see them as the winged and the fanged god, the gargoyle and the griffin, whereas Anakin does see them like that, but they also manifest according to his perception.
Yeah.
So that links in there. Yeah, I agree there.
So
I want to look at it from that angle again, actually.
so yeah, I do think they're just kind of stand-ins for any religious figure. Basically, it's just how
Yeah,
how that's going to manifest
I
to any specific group.
I definitely agree there, and I think that's what they were getting at with the point of establishing them as reflections of the life force around them. They can take any form, I think that that's exactly what they were getting at there, and I think that's what
And-
shamanism in general gets at, which is why I think shamanism, in a way, like kind of fills a lot of the gaps in religion, because it kind of explains how multiple religions can exist in that sense, because it does say that the axis mundi is like the reflection of the inner self, and it explains the same stuff that mortis does.
That's part of the whole. Okay, it can be multiple planets idea, or again, it can be Korriban, it can be Utapau, it can be the Forest Planet, it can be Dathomir, it can be Iego, blah 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 blah. There's probably 24 planets that I can name that hit a lot of the criteria. It can be Endor. It can especially be Endor, right?
Yeah, I like Endor. I've been reading a lot of the Ewok stuff recently, which is basically
So
mortis. It's mortis. It's the same fucking thing.
yeah, so I do think that we're just seeing various states of these planets, and they do exist in different locations, but like again, I don't know, maybe with the monoliths what the ones we're trying to do is there's Valius, have you ever looked at World of Warcraft at all?
No, no, I haven't.
Okay, so basically in World of Warcraft, the Titans, which are the shapers of the world, architects, basically the same idea as the ones. They have a copy of the planet the setting happens in, like a copy of the planet before any sentient life existed on it, and they can load that copy into the planet, basically. So basically, if they have a save file, right? And they can overload the current save with that save.
Yeah.
I think the monoliths are the same idea. They're taking planets that are very, very influential to the Force, and they're producing a lot of Force energy. And what I think they're doing is I think they're making copies of them.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have a little look at that. What's that called on World of Warcraft? What should I look for?
The copy is called the Emerald Dream. Effectively, it's just a green planet without any sentient interaction or influence. But that's how I would see Mortis, and that's how I would see all of those monolith worlds.
Yeah. Did you write that in the blog? Because I didn't got reading that about World of Warcraft.
Sure, I'll write that. I'll just send you the message.
Oh, okay, sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, have you looked into the Axis Mundi concept at all? Because that's really interesting.
I've looked into it briefly.
Yeah, because I just read about it the other day, well, a few months ago now, and yeah, it just completely validates every single point I was making about Anakin. Like, it's not even to the point where I want to just completely redo that debate with Anth and start from scratch and argue from a more philosophical point of view, because it's a complete mirror, and it doesn't make sense for Anakin to be drawing on extra fuel. You know what I mean? That's completely like, it's about himself, a battle within himself, and it's about proving that he can harness that from letting go of his inner conflict or from drawing it from around him. But it's completely extra fuel, just doesn't fit into the framework at all. It's almost funny at this point. It's like, you know what I mean? I mean, I don't know what your views on it are at the moment. Do you agree with me on that, or on the Mortis side, or like, what's your stance on that?
On the Axis Mundi?
Yeah, on how it's influenced, on how Anakin kind of interacts with it, what's going on in Mortis there. Like, do you agree with my stance that is the power within Anakin inherently? Because that's what most people disagree on, and I think it's honestly one of the most obvious parts of it. I think just establishing that that's his inner power.
I think. Well, you know that I do think that. How do I put this? So you know how a planet doesn't produce more gravity in one direction, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe a better example would be a black hole.
Yeah.
A black hole does not produce more gravity in any one direction. It's spherical. It's a single point. At any given point, that force is acting on you with the same focused,
Or it's
I guess.
omnidirectional, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily think that Anakin would be unique in having a having the full measure of the Force within him. Fact Files says that every being is like that, right?
Yeah, no,
So
I'd agree. Everyone has the Force within them.
yeah, maybe.
But what it is, it's not about the amount of, it's not about like the depth of the Force within him. It's the coupling to the three aspects, the Anima, Pneuma, and Hyperion. He sits directly in the center. Have you read the Shadow Wars trilogy by George Lucas?
I mean, I skimmed it. I don't read a lot of books in the first place, and that book is designed to give you brain cancer, basically.
Yeah, it's fucking, it's all three are, the second one's a bit easier on you, but like the second one's the best one definitely. But the second one in particular is the one that it has a diagram on it, and it outlines the same diagram, the Jedi's diagram for the Force. It outlines
Yeah.
what Plagueis draws as well in Book of Sith, which is this midichlorian diagram, which is the three things, and the interlock in the middle. And the middle is
Yeah.
the axis. That's the axis. So everyone's going to have the Force within them, but not everyone's going to be connected to that in a sense where they can, at the surface level, at the midichlorian interface, to where they can use all of that. And the thing with the Shadow Wars trilogy, is that Elora Danan is, and even Willow as well, they kind of start it in Willow and then elaborate on it in Shadow Wars. Elora Danan is the exact same concept as the Chosen One. She's the embodiment of the bloodstream of the universe. She's the axis. She tips everything, kind of thing. And so she's in the center on that diagram. And so if you translate that to Star Wars terms, with everything we know, and Elora Danan's a direct parallel, you can literally look at great. It's
So
exactly the same.
what were the three terms in Shadow Wars again? I can't quite remember what they
Circle of the
were. There
will,
was like,
circle of the spirit, and circle of the flesh. And so that represents
where were dragons located on that diagram again? Because they say that dragons are effectively immutable in form and work based off of pure belief and that kind of stuff. So that would be more of your Talzin types.
Yeah, I think they were. I can't remember. I've got a diagram. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think because again, you would have a mystical aspect to Anakin, which I guess would be the birth.
Yeah. So he sits in the center of all of that, and you have fire, and it all links into these. They say the Jedi fire, all that sort of stuff. Star Wars is largely based on Heraclitus, who's a pre-Stoic philosopher, who says that fire is the underlying element of all existence in the universe, and it directly ties into that because what was I saying? Sorry, I'm high right now. What was I saying about? Where was I going? I was talking about before I mentioned Heraclitus.
Yeah. No.
Before I mentioned him, what was I saying? I was making a point of that.
You were mentioning that temperature fire is the foundation of the universe, basically, in his view.
Yeah, in his view, and Star Wars is largely based on that, and I was linking that to something. I was connecting that to something.
You did Jedi fire. You mentioned Jedi fire. I would also mention probably. Well, did I mention that? So with the midichlorian chloroplast connection, George is basically alluding to the fact that the Force can be fed on like light can by plants, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Force sensitivity is a lot like photosynthesis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he says it's a mix between mitochondria and photosynthesis, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that reminds me a bit of what I was getting at. Anakin's at that interface, so it's not necessarily that he's like a giant battery of every single bit of force in the universe. He's just the interface in which all that can change. But that doesn't degrade him. People say, well, that's not what you've been arguing. It's exactly what I've been arguing, and that doesn't degrade him. That, when I frame it that way, because that's still exactly the same thing that the Father is. You know what I mean? So power in that way isn't really judged on quantity of energies in a sense. It's more based on what you are. You know what I mean? And Anakin and Father are that whole system of Aperion, Numa, and Aloriddanon, that system collapsed into one. It's the Anima, Aperion, Numa, and they control that all.
How do you figure the father can do that without a set physical form? Do you think Mortis is doing a lot of it for him?
No, so I think Mortis is said to be the conduit, right? So Mortis
Yeah.
is where all the living force comes from.
So
And
Mortis is effectively a big midichlorian.
Yeah, basically. And then you've got the father, the ones which drink from the font and the pool. So that's the cosmic element. So them as beings are the cosmic elements, and they fit into that living element through existing there. So they're not necessarily the link, but they are both in a way, or rather maybe they are both.
Well, yeah, I think they would be the link because Shmi Skywalker would be cosmic force, right? Or all the forms that the ones can take would be cosmic force.
Not necessarily, right? Because they say that they embody the life force around them. And I
Yes, but
think that
Mortis
may
brings
not.
that all to the surface, right? Because all of the force flows through Mortis and it's timeless, right? So all of the energy is
Yeah,
living
I
force
guess
there.
if you say that memory is a cosmic force and it brings that out, then you could say that that's cosmic force. But it's an embodiment of she's an embodiment of the life force of Anakin, which obviously includes some sort of residual memory or something of Shmi. But if you want to say memories are cosmic force, then yeah, I'd agree. But it does get foggy when you look at all that stuff, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just with Mortis in particular. It's hard to know, like with the life force around them comment. With Mortis, wouldn't all of the life force ever be around them just kind of automatically? If all of the force
Yeah.
flows through Mortis,
Definitely,
and
but they
Mortis is
wouldn't
an
have anything.
organic thing.
They wouldn't have anything to mirror if it's just a culmination of kind of everything. I think it kind of mirrors and refines the. Well, it definitely we know that definitely amplifies the interior state of the entrance, so it definitely kind of refines that too. I think people. It's not explored. Other people going to Mortis isn't really explored. But I think if other people went to Mortis, I don't necessarily think that it would appear like it does, or they might not be able to go to as many places as they can in season 3.
Well, one thing that I do like to bring up is again how the Sith spirits manifest to the sun, right? That
Yeah,
doesn't really have anything to do with Anakin at that point. That's just Mortis itself doing
yeah.
that
So
because all of the
that's the cosmic. Yeah, so I guess that's weird, right? Because they obviously are just the voice of the dark side. That's the voice of the dark side speaking to the sun, and we know the sun isn't inherently the dark side. The only sense in
yeah,
which the sun is the dark side is that he's the dark side within Anakin. But the sun is just
yeah,
a Numa. He's the dark side orientated Numa. He's not the dark side itself, and that gets into Viger's whole thing, right? Is because
yeah,
the light and dark don't exist externally; they're parts of yourself. So the sun and
yeah,
daughters shouldn't theoretically they shouldn't exist externally, and they don't really. It's really trippy, but they don't exist. They don't exist externally in that sense. They are energy when it's external, and they're refined when it's in a spirit realm or in Mortis when the entrance and belief and perception are involved, which links back to
yeah.
what you were saying before.
Yeah, so that's kind of tied into Mortis being organic form, right? And all of the force always flowing through Mortis
Mm-hmm.
and not existing within any set point in space and time, and it all kind of happening simultaneously around it.
Mm-hmm.
That to me just indicates that yes, the ones are defined by the life energy around them, but in the context of Mortis, that's all the life energy that ever was. And it's not only all the life energy that ever was, it also retains echoes of its shape, I guess. You don't have the kind of melting into the force that you necessarily do outside of Mortis, right?
Well, I don't necessarily think that anyone would be able to. If I think only Anakin can interact with the entirety of that when he goes there, and that's mirrored in the philosophy as well. No one can. No one can interact with the entire. No one can shape the entirety of the axis. They can change the axis in small ways in a way, but they can't. They aren't a representation of the axis themselves. So the only reason Anakin can do what he does on Mortis is because he himself is an axis mundi. So when he goes there, his interior state is mirrored, and the entire state is externalized, which is why he can use the entire force. Like even if he uses the planet, that's still a showing that he has that. And it's not apparent until you read the philosophy, but even him using the planet makes it apparent that he has that power within him. because it's
So
simplified.
one, go right ahead.
Bayless, you mentioned earlier, that you think if other people went to Mortis, it'd be like different. When Zendor goes to Mortis, it's just kind of described how it is in TCW. It's just this dead world, and he goes and talks with the father, the son, and the daughter, and just thinks they're just some other force religion. He kind of ignores them. He doesn't care that much.
Send that to me because I haven't reread that since I've been over the philosophy stuff for the Axis Mundi.
Sure.
But that's going to be a reflection of his internal state. If the writers of that, I think it's mentioned in it.
That's Jason's right.
So one thing that I would
discussion.
Go
I
one thing that I would bring up is that again, Anakin is brought to Mortis to bring balance to the Force, right?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that other Force users would be incapable of affecting the whole of the Axis Mundi. They might be incapable of bringing balance to the Force. Maybe that would be the distinction. I think if Sidious showed up on Mortis, for example, the son would be super strong, and the daughter would be like a frail old lady, right?
Yeah.
Because again, their forms are based on the life energy around them. So the light would be very weakened, the dark would be very, very powerful. I think Sidious could probably dominate the light and be controlled by the dark side, be bidden by the sun, and made a puppet like Ahsoka.
Yeah, well, I think it would mirror Sidious's internal state, right? So the light, the sun, how the daughter appears to Sidious would be exactly the internal challenge that he needs to do to fully defeat the light from without. It's all mirrored from within. So I think
Do you think it's to defeat the light? Or do you think it's just the active state of the light within him at any given time, right? Because for Anakin, the daughter mirrors Padme, right?
Yeah. Well, aspects of Padme, yeah, definitely.
Because the whole interaction between the son and the daughter is the whole Episode 3 Anakin deal.
Aye.
And the son is mostly showing up as Episode 3 and Episode 2 Anakin, and the father is mostly old Ben, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So if you brought Sidious to Mortis, I think the father can probably just remain unchanged. Because again, they say the son and the daughter's power flows through the father in the first place. By killing himself, he takes their power. I think the father probably has some independence, some ability to kind of mold the interactions a little bit. I don't think the daughter and the son really have that whatsoever.
Yeah, so I mean, it's tricky to know really because you don't see. I mean, we get some notes of Zendor going there and stuff, but you don't get like we don't see anyone fully going there. We don't see how that appears to them. So I'd need to kind of look into, I'd need to look into like what might happen if Sidious went there because that's a cool concept. But I think obviously, I mean, it's a given that it would reflect his internal state, but how that would manifest is kind of it's hard to know. You know what I mean? Like, to defeat the light, essentially, because I mean, he's the inheritance of the dark. They say that. That's really weird, actually. Yeah, because they say he's the inheritance of the dark, as if he's like a part of balance. Like he's going to come in and bring balance, and in a sense, balance is one thing, and then once you get the dualities, it becomes a separate kind of balance where it's light or dark, light versus dark. That's kind of what it turns into. But it's almost as like the balance for Sidious to end the cycle would just be everything leads to him just completely destroying everything, and that's what he ends up. That's what it's going towards. But then obviously that's not what balance is because Anakin acts on behalf of the real balance, not this duality balance, and he comes in and you know what I mean?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. One thing with the daughter, right, is that again you have beginning, middle, and end as the placements. Again, I do think that is meant to relate to a human life cycle. So the daughter is the beginning, right? This is young Anakin. This is Padme.
Yeah.
TPM Anakin. The son is the middle. This is Clone Wars Anakin. This is Revenge of the Sith Anakin. This is Attack of the Clones Anakin.
Mm-hmm.
The father is the end.
Which is Redeem Vader.
And Old Ben.
mean, I think they
And remember,
definitely. Go on.
and remember that the father can become a Force ghost, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the one thing with the whole father situation is the father is meant to be like, you'll see the truth of who you really are, blah, 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 blah. When he echoes Anakin, he's showing Anakin who he's going to be. Okay, you're the chosen one, so on and so forth. With Sidious, the only figure that I can really think that's going to show up for him,
Yeah.
maybe you get Plagueis. Or something very, very similar to Plagueis there. I don't know.
Yeah, at least it would be something. Yeah, at least the sun would manifest aspects of Plagueis, I think, or not necessarily the sun.
I'm thinking maybe the father.
Yeah.
I think it would be the father.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think maybe.
Because it's going to be a mentor figure, obviously.
Yeah, and it's going
I
to be
think.
some sort of fear. And he clearly
Yeah.
has some sort of mental wall there regarding Plagueis, even if it's not fear. Exactly.
Yeah.
He's lying, isn't he? He's lying about him, and he's
Yeah.
also kind of bigging him up in doing so.
Yeah.
And it shows what he thinks about him, and it's like you've got something going on with him, like you've got beef with him in a way, you know what I mean? And that's in the sense that it would show up on Mortis, that internal monologue, externalized.
The daughter insert there is really, really strange just because, again, we're looking for innocence in a man who maybe never had it, right?
Yeah.
The beginning, right? So I think maybe it could have to do with the state of development Palpatine was in when he was innocent. So maybe you would get the daughter being an infant or a toddler.
Yeah. Or like, yes, something
And this,
resembling that in him. Which I think he doesn't have at all by the time he's by the time in episode 3 when he's dead, when he dies in episode 3.
yeah.
I think that from then on, obviously, he doesn't have a daughter. So if he went to Mortis,
Yeah.
it'd be completely dead. It'd be really weird. I'd have to think on that, like what it exactly be like. But yeah, he wouldn't even have a daughter, would he? And how
No.
would that even manifest in terms of a internal trial for him? Because for Anakin, it's all about balance. And that's why I just don't even think Sidious would go there to begin with, because the Force brings you there for a reason. And if Sidious doesn't have a purpose to do with homeostasis, then I don't think he'd even end up there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like asking them questions kind of leads you to a dead end in a sense, because he wouldn't actually be brought there. So it's like you can't really say like what would be there for him, because he wouldn't be there to have something for him, because everything that would be there for him would be leading towards a greater cosmic homeostasis to do with the Force itself. Right.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah.
One thing I would bring up is they say Mortis is basically like the Dagobah cave or blah blah blah, this, that, or the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
I would bring up the fact that in Ludo Kresh's tomb in KOTOR 2, if you are not dedicated to the light or to the dark, if you are kind of wishy-washy in the middle, you are particularly vulnerable to what Ludo Kresh's tomb is going to show you. A test for commitment. So I wonder then if the result of a committed Force user such as the, let's say, original trilogy Yoda or Palpatine, who both kind of have made their choices, they aren't going to move from where they are now. When they go to Mortis, they wouldn't necessarily be drawn there, but if they manage to find their way there, I think it would be much more stable than it would be under Anakin. Again, the stability might be, in the case of Sidious, a slow death, a slow march towards death.
Yeah.
With
I mean, if you did
with
go
the
slowly
imbalances
towards his
involved.
death. Yeah. No, I agree there. I think it's
So
interesting as well.
again,
Go on.
I do think they can influence the whole.
Yeah, they can.
I just don't think they can influence the whole to a positive result, more or less.
And I'd
Would be
also
my
hope that they can. I think they can influence the whole in the sense that if I put a bowling ball on a bed and I press down on the bed, somewhere else that bowling ball is going to travel towards me, but I'm still not the bed or the bowling ball. It's not. We're not looking at the entire bed. It's just me putting my hand on the bed. So it's not the bed changing and shaping itself. It's me putting my hand on the bed and causing that bowling ball to shift towards me. And so I think that's the way in which they can influence the whole, which is also the way in which the Sith control the Force. I think it connects. It's not exactly the same. I think it connects to that in the sense that the Sith control the Force not because they're more powerful than the Force, not in a holistic, entirely in a holistic sense, but in the sense that they're like a cancer on a body. They're not the whole body,
Yep.
but they're a cancer which can ultimately shift where that body goes, what it does, how it works, and kill the body, but it's not representative of the body itself.
I will say, in terms of at least how Palpatine was being treated in the 80s, the scripts actually do have Palpatine as like the anima source of the dark side, feeding Vader, feeding this, that, and the other thing. This is in the script, this is in draft scripts, this is in the data bank, and this is also in the novel.
Send that to me, please, after we're done with the call, because I'd like to have a look at that. But
Sure.
I've just read all the draft scripts. I didn't actually catch on to that, but I was mostly focusing on the parts where Palpatine says, "I can sense your presence in the Netherworld," and you can't help him in the Netherworld, which ties directly into the Force Priestesses stuff. And now this is kind of it's a threat, honestly, beyond time and space in a sense, because that's a cosmic window we're looking through there. It's not the present now; it's an all-time cosmic. Like it's the imbalance distorts time itself and distorts everything, which is largely why I think obviously the Chosen One's the strongest, and why this is the penultimate kind of thing going on there, because it's beyond time and space. But yeah, that connects to the priestesses. But what we say? Go on.
So how they describe it basically is that and again, this is something Jake found, and I'm just basing this off of what he sent me in PMs, but you remember the whole idea in Splinter of the Mind's Eye with the Kyber crystal as the centering, focusing iris of the Force, basically like another mortis, right?
Yeah, it's the Chosen One. That's what the Kyber crystal.
Yeah,
it's what Pina painted as well.
That's actually based on something George had for a draft script for A New Hope.
I think I recall that vaguely. Go on.
Yep, and the Sun Star is a similar type of thing, right?
Yeah, the Sun Star is definitely. Yeah, I was about to say actually Endor.
The Return of the Jedi treatments have Palpatine serve that role.
Say again.
The Return of the Jedi treatments, the Return of the Jedi draft scripts have Palpatine serve that role.
And then later, yeah, okay, that makes sense though, because just the way they had him in general back then. But then later on, when the Chosen One concept's introduced, the Chosen One becomes that role that he leeches on.
Yeah,
they kind of swap places there, which is interesting.
One thing with Palpatine in the again, the modern databanks still have Palpatine doing that actually.
Well, I think that works still, because he still does that, but I think he just does that through Vader, and that's still him doing that though, because it's him that just has. He's basically Vader's mind at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So yeah, but he can also feed it. He can also feed it to his servants, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, the idea there is that more or less, what was I thinking? I'm losing my mind. So when Palpatine. So in the original script, they were going to be over Sullust, right? Which is the fire planet. It was going to be the Imperial capital, and where the Had Abaddon. My bad. Fuck, I can't pronounce that either. It's something that sounds vaguely Middle Eastern.
Yeah, it's
planet. Had Abaddon, whatever. Anyways. They were going to, that was going to be the Imperial capital, and in the draft script, Vader meets Palpatine much like he does in Return of the Jedi, and Palpatine mentions, "Hey, your power is waning. You've been away from me for far too long." And then that ties into the resonance in the Return of the Jedi novel and how Vader wants to take Palpatine's energy into himself when he kills him, that kind of shit.
Yeah, it's flipped.
Yeah.
You flip it. Yeah. I've caught stuff like that in the past, but I haven't really fleshed that out. But yeah, yeah. I need to look at that again. That's cool though, because that reframes how we have to look at how we have to look at Vader, especially in that framework. Because if Palpatine represents that in some of the material that Vader's in, then that changes how Vader operates in that material. And we need to look at that in the wider picture.